So here's the overview of today's agenda. We're going to just do a brief overview of Comprizon. I'm going to talk just a little bit about what C-Suite is, or the Comprizon Suite system is. There are a couple new folks joining us today, so this is kind of geared towards them. Next, we're going to be talking about navigation, reporting, searches, kind of organizing your workspace. And just to preface this, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to give you different options pretty much throughout the entire training of what you can or cannot do. Obviously, there are some things that we talked about, especially with like how to set up DOBs or how to set up realignments in the previous training led by Julian. But today's going to be mostly just, hey, here are things that the system does. Maybe you didn't know that we could do that. Here's your options. Then we're going to go through the actual requisition creation, or just taking a look at accounting codes, creating a accounting default versus accounting codes per CLIN. I know this is a question that I get asked a lot. Not on here. I think that is also part of the requisition overview. And that's actually related to the reports and searches. We're going to talk about how to copy requisitions, how to, basically just how to save some time navigating through the system, because it does get clunky. So we're going to get through some, hopefully we're going to get through this with enough time, maybe 30 to 20 minutes at the end to have some Q&A. All right. So let me go ahead and share the screen. Does everybody see a green Comprizon or a Comprizon Suite screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Great. Okay. So this is C.Request. I am in the production environment. All right. The only reason why I make that distinction is just to let you guys know that I'm not going to give you control. Sorry. That I'm not in test, and that I'm not going to be messing up anything. So when I switch back and forth between tabs, just know that green is production. This is like the actual working space. Test is where we kind of muck about. Okay, so in production, you'll notice that my main menu has quite a bit more options. Yours will definitely look different, which is more than fine. As soon as you log in here, you'll see a bunch of different tabs: just in, hot list, recently accessed, worksheet, alerts, and messages. So your just in is going to be anything that was recently assigned to you. This isn't this tab isn't necessarily as important for folks that use Comprizon.request, because you'll be creating more documents than actually getting them assigned. So just to talk about Comprizon Suite, it's an acquisition program that's developed and maintained and supported by CACI. We've been using Comprizon Suite for going on about 20 years, so it's quite outdated. So some things don't necessarily work quite well. For example, I can't click the back button, otherwise the system will kind of throw a fit. Some of you may have noticed that before, but in order to go back to a previous screen, I have to go forward. And I'll give you an example of that, and I'll make a note of that as we go on. All right. So Comprizon Suite is broken up into two modules: Comprizon.request or C.Request, and Comprizon.award or C.award. C.award is where enterprise services, your contracting office, mostly does their work, actually exclusively does their work, and C.Request is where the program offices or the small bureaus exclusively do your work. So anything in here that we send over from C.Request has to travel through the financial interface. Now, depending on which bureau or who is maintaining your funds, or kind of dictates which finance system you go through. You might go through NIST or NOAA or Census Finance. So depending on that, depending on where you're going or who you are, could change your which system you are supported by. All right, so let's go through the tabs one more time. So your hot list is anything that you have bookmarked. Just think of this as a bookmark. Recently accessed is any document that you've recently accessed or opened within the last 30 days. Your worksheet is going to contain the entirety of the population of any document that you own. Okay. Now notice that all the search fields are blank here. When I press search and all the search fields are blank, it's going to show me everything. Now I have 172 in here. That may be greater or way less than some of you folks who could have, you know, hundreds, if not thousands. So if we want to focus on a specific thing here, we can use the search by document filter. This drop down, we can do a requisition name and contains, let's say, Sprint. No results found. Okay, so maybe it's not there. Maybe we do a different document, or maybe we do search by date. We want a fiscal year of FY19 for requisitions, and I'll press search. And here's all the requisitions that I've created in FY19. All right, so these are just different ways that you can kind of manipulate the system. And you can also do something like this. Requisition number or name contains or begins with, let's say I'm looking for something from BA. Okay. So I've got one. And now I don't necessarily own this, but I own this award. So please don't get, you know, don't worry about the fact that I have this if this is your PR. This is just kind of a formality. Okay, so this is your worksheet. We'll come back to that later. Now, alerts and messages. Oh, actually, one more thing. Okay, so we have document status. This is really important. So sometimes we get messages from requisitioners saying that, hey, I submitted this, you know, can you check on it? And the requisition actually hasn't been submitted. So you can check that pretty easily by going to your worksheet, going to document type, or on this line, requisition, document status, unsubmitted. Actually, I'll just stick with unsubmitted, and just to see. Here are all the requisitions that I have unsubmitted. And you can even see, okay, I'm looking for things that I submitted, but maybe are maybe on solicitation. And I press search. Okay, so nothing. So there's just different ways that you can kind of search through your worksheet just to see different things. The search fields here on your worksheet are very similar to the ones that are in Procurement Search. So if I click this, very similar, very similar. Now, if I wanted to, actually, I'm going to do this in the test environment. Did everybody see this blue screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to be in Procurement Search or Office Procurement Search. They're kind of actually the same thing. Office Procurement Search just limits your search to anybody who is in your office. So if I'm looking for somebody in like CIO, or if I'm looking for if I'm in Enterprise Services and I'm looking for only Enterprise Services work, I would use Office Procurement Search. Now let's say I wanted to let's say I'm looking for a requisition and I don't exactly know what the number or the name is, but I know who created it. So I'm going to use this little search, this magnifying glass thing right here. Once I do that, there's going to be a pop-up that appears. I'm not sure if you can see the pop-up or not, but a pop-up window will appear, and there will be an agent code with a name and an office, and then you can select that person. So I'm going to click select now. Now, if I did know that person's code, I could just type that in. Same result. And if I leave all of this blank and I just hit that refresh button or search, I can see everything that Julian has created, everything that Julian's worked on. So we've got some FY19s, some FY20s, some 21s in here. I think I know what the name is. Hopefully. Or maybe I don't. So you can scroll through here. And let's say, okay, this is the one that I want. Add funding to base year. Okay, great. So now I'm going to click on this. So again, just to reiterate, I'm in Office Procurement Search. I didn't know what the name or the number of the requisition was, so I left this search by document field blank. However, I did know who was the owner or the creator of that requisition, so I used them. So I typed that code into this little box and I pressed search. And now I'm going to scroll down here, and anything in blue is something that you can click on. So I'm going to click into this. Now, what this does when you access a document through Procurement Search, it allows you full view access, full read access. So there's nothing in here that looks necessarily any different than a requisition that you would own, except the fact that you can't make any edits. Now, let me paint a scenario here. Let's say that you're trying to submit a requisition for an existing contract that has base plus 5 options, let's say. And now we're in option year 2, and we're about to we're getting ready to fund and exercise that option year. Now, instead of starting from scratch, I could do exactly what I just did and find an existing requisition, right? And that existing requisition will have a ton of information, right? Oh, the contract number is already here. Great. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to look for anything. The CBOT number is in there, which is the replacement for the FAPS utility. This is our forecasting system now. The unspec code, the FSC code is all plugged in. You know, you'll have to change a couple things here, et cetera, but we're already light years ahead of where we would be if we were just starting from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a cursory search first, or rather not a search, but I'm going to look through this requisition just to see what exactly is going on. Okay, so we're adding funding to a base year. Now I can change this. So let's say that this PR was the intent was to add funding to a base year. Now let's say I'm exercising option year 2 or option year 1 rather. Okay, I can still copy this, and let's say it uses the same color of funding. I can still copy this requisition, and everything will come over. All right, so I can take a look here. Okay, great. This is the accounting code that was used. Let's say everything stayed the same: the project, the fund code, the org code, the object class. The only thing that changed was the fiscal year. Great, done, easy. What are some of the support documents? Okay, so nothing on here yet. That's okay. I can add stuff. All right, great. So now what do I do here? Let's recap. I just went through Procurement Search. I didn't know what the requisition number or the name was, but I know who did it. So I used that search function to search for that person. And now on the requisition summary screen, I'm going to hit copy. Okay. So here's where we have requisition document duplicate. Now we're going to be copying from this document number /name. I'm going to ask that everybody just make sure that they're on mute, please. Getting some feedback here. Can you go ahead and check to see if you're on mute? Julian, can you go through the participant list and just check? Oh, there it is. Okay. And once again, just as a courtesy to everyone, please make sure that you are on mute or that you're not accidentally unmuting yourself. Okay. So back to where we were. We are at the requisition document duplicate screen. So what I did was I was at the summary screen of this requisition that I found using Procurement Search. Then I went to Actions and I clicked Copy. Now from here, it took me to this screen. All right. So now it's saying I'm copying from this requisition to, now this counter or this document number is for OS customers. If you were a small bureau customer, you would have a different drop-down setting. Okay, but for right now, this is what it looks like. I believe the freeform box is not available in production. And anything I type in this document number is going to carry over into this name. So now I'm going to hit save. And now it's going to take me here. Now here's one thing that we all need to be on the lookout for, is that when you copy a document from the Procurement Search function, you are still in view-only mode. Call this a glitch, call it a system quirk, whatever you like, but we can't change anything here. Okay, so how am I going to change? How am I going to make any edits to this requisition that I just copied? I need to go back into my worksheet. Now you're going to see something pop up. It says changes have been made and not saved. Press OK to save changes. Press cancel to continue without saving changes. If I press OK, I'm going to get a bunch of different errors here. Anything that's a red error at the top is a system error. This is Comprizon suite telling you that you can't proceed. Okay, so now we're in kind of a catch-22. I can't make any edits, but a lot of these fields are invalid. So what do? I'm going to press cancel. That doesn't, and now I'm at the home screen. Now that doesn't mean that anything that I did is completely invalidated. What you'll find here, and I'm going to use a search. I copied that requisition number that I just created. I press search. It's in my worksheet. And just as a proof of concept, I believe it's also in my, it's not in my work, it's not in my recently accessed. Okay, so no proof of concept there. But I'm in my worksheet now, and I made sure to copy or remember that this is the requisition number that I have. And now I can click on it. Now, anything that you access from these first 4 tabs, you're going to be able to make changes to, because these are documents that you own. Okay, remember, Procurement Search or Office Procurement Search, while they look the same, these are view only. Anything you access from here, you have full read and write access. So I'm going to click in here. Now it looks exactly the same, correct? It's a carbon copy. However, if I click on administration, boom, all of these text fields are open to be edited. Now, let's say I'm working, but I have to move on and I can't really save anything quite yet. I can do the same thing. So if I try to click save, I'm going to get one of these system errors, right? However, if I press cancel, it takes me out to the screen. All right. This is a good kind of workaround for the system. I would recommend that you use it just in case, and you can always come back. Now, I wasn't able to save anything, but don't feel like, let's say, okay, I'll update all this stuff later. It doesn't matter. What's important right now is I deal with the line items and all this jazz, or maybe I need to upload a supporting document. Who knows? Okay. Now, what you'll see here is that I have the same line item and the same accounting code that I had that was on this previous requisition, right? We can even go back and find that. So this is kind of a natural transition into talking about how to set up different line items with different accounting codes and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know what the majority of C.Request users are doing in terms of how you create an accounting code. Do you do it on the summary screen or you do it per line item? Now, what I will say is I'm going to give you options, and I'll give you a suggestion on what, in my experienced opinion, is probably the best way to go about doing this. And I'm not going to handicap you into making a decision one way or the other. Okay, so first, let's talk about the accounting section under the summary menu. And I'm going to preface this with saying that I don't like the way that this was done. It's rather confusing, and I don't understand why it was programmed this way. But it's one of those things that we need to be cognizant of and that we need to pay attention to. Otherwise, we're going to get lost, and otherwise, we're going to have a lot of issues when we try to make edits back and forth. Okay, so I'm at the requisition summary menu. I'm looking under sections. I'm going to click accounting. Now, it's very important that you pay attention to this upper menu right here, because this is going to tell you exactly where you are. All right, so this says account code summary management. All right, screens can look the same. They can look very, very similar, but in actuality, they might be totally different. And we'll see that in a second here. But I'm at the account code summary management screen. Now, I'm guessing because this was an FY18 accounting code that we had a lot of different copies made from one requisition, probably dating back to FY18. So we're going to see this accounting code here, right? Now, it is set as a default. I can create a new accounting code. And I'm just going to input a bunch of different numbers. And I'm going to make this no BOC code. I'm going to put this as 50%. And I'm also going to mark this as a default. I'm going to click save. Now, I just created a default accounting code with a default percentage of 50%. And I'll show you how that kind of comes into play later. We're going to go back. Remember, I can't press the back button necessarily, right? So if I want to go forward into the summary screen, I have to click summary. And there's no fix for that. There's no getting around that. If you press the back button, it might work or it might not, and you might get kicked out. Please, don't click the back button. Just move forward. All right, so now I'm back, quote unquote, at the requisition summary menu. Remember, we just created an accounting code under the accounting defaults or the accounting code summary management screen. I'm going to go into my line items and I want to show you something. So we have an existing line item here, right? I'm going to click into the line item. I'm going to click into accounting. That accounting code that I created did not populate on that line item. Okay. However, if I create a new CLIN, I'm going to hit apply because I want to stay on the same page. I'm going to go to accounting code here. Look at what appeared. The two accounting codes that I marked as a default populates on new accounting codes, or I'm sorry, new line items. Okay. So anything that I have here, I'm going to go back to the summary screen. Now I'm going to go back to the account code summary management. Any accounting code that I have here that's marked as a default will automatically populate on any newly created line item. Now I'm going to do something a little funky. I'm going to make a change to this existing accounting code. Now, many of you have done this. and I've seen this happen many times, but I remember I just made a change here. This was our FY18 accounting code that was carried over from a previous requisition. I changed the fiscal year to 21. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to change one more thing then. I'm going to use a different project code. Okay, so now I changed this one. I changed FY18 to FY21, and we're using a different project code. Now, notice the system will let you know, okay, this is being used on one line item. Now, remember, we're in the account code summary management screen. This is where I set up my account code defaults. I'm going to go to summary. I'm going to go into line items. This is the line item that we created that had those two default accounting codes appear. I'm going to go to accounting, and look what happened. That accounting code did not update here. Okay, so if you need to make an edit to an accounting code, you'll have to do it per CLIN. So if you have, let's say you're using, let's say you have 5 CLINs and there's 2 accounting codes. They're all the same across all CLINs, and you have to make an edit to one of those accounting codes. You'll need to go into each and every single line item to make that edit. So if I press save here, so I'm updating this into what we just made an edit to in our account default. The system will know that I've now linked these two accounting codes together. However, if I make a change back to this, let's say I do this again, the system is going to know that, oh, nope, it's not on there. So it's a little stubborn in this way. So you'll have to make sure that, and you'll see no line item records found that include this account code. Boom. And what you'll notice there is I also changed the default percentage. It's detecting that I'm on line item number 2, or that this accounting code has been updated and that it is now linked to line item number 2. If I go to summary and I go back to line item number 2, the change that I made to the default percentage did not carry over. Okay, so again, just another proof of concept that when you're making adjustments to the accounting code defaults in the account code summary menu, those changes are not retroactive. All right. Now let's talk about some ways that we can manipulate this. Let's say, using our 5 line item scenario, that we have 5 line items and now we have 2 accounting codes. However, we know that CLINs 3 and 4 are going to be using project 0166, and only CLINs 1, 2, and 5 need 0701. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit 0701. I'm going to uncheck this as a default. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go back to the line item screen. I'm going to create 2 CLINs. Actually, I'm going to copy these 2 CLINs and let's see if they appear. Okay, nope, that's not what I wanted. Okay, so I'm going to delete this. But you could do that, I guess. But so I'm going to create 2 CLINs. This is one for $100. Test, apply. And if I go to accounting, only 0166 appeared. And that is because we unchecked this 0701 project as a default. So I'm not sure if too many folks are doing that, but that is something that you can do. And again, I'm going to do this, apply. So it created, oops, I created a line item 4. And I'm going to go to accounting. And again, I have 0166 there. Now let's do the opposite again. Let's mark 0701 as the default. I'm going to hit apply. And let's uncheck 0166 as a default. We don't want that. And you can also get an overview of exactly what's going on here. 50% of this accounting code is applied to this CLIN. All right, great. So now we have 0701 is now the default. So any subsequent line items that I create are going to have that accounting code applied. And I'm going to go 1 for $50, and I'm going to hit apply. Getting some feedback here. Can we make sure that you have your mic on mute? Okay. All right. So now I'm in line item number 5. And I've just created this line item with 0701, and that appeared here. Now, I marked those accounting codes from the defaults to have 50%. So you'll notice here that I created a line item that has a cost of $50, but because from the accounting code summary screen, I marked the default percent as 50. Those line or this accounting code is only going to have 50% of whatever this total is. Okay. Now for requisitions, let's say that you're providing incremental funding, all right? It needs to be fully funded. So if you want to send, if you want to have the contracting office obligate $50, you need to commit $50. Okay. It's not just actually, this is a good transition. Well, let's go ahead and talk about incremental funding and exercising options. So let me go to a different requisition. We'll just use this one, for instance. Okay, so this is part of my realignment demonstration, but we can kind of use this as a similar thing here. Okay, I want to, let's say I want to provide funding and exercise option year 1. And let's say that line item on the award is 1001. All right. You need to make sure that you have your line item created as such. You can't send over 001 or 003 or 005 because the way that the core financial system usually works is that it tracks these commitments based on the line item level rather than the accounting code level. While we can accept PRs that do have different or mismatched line items, it's important that you work with the contracting specialist or contracting officer, especially when you have a bunch of different out years. Don't just send, like, let's say you're trying to fund all of option year 1. All of option year 1 has 5 CLINs, 1001 through 1005. It's important that you send over a PR that has money for 1001 through 1005, not 0001 or 0005. I hope that makes sense. I understand that sometimes that, we're in a bit of a rush and that things can kind of get hectic, especially in Q4. But it really does, if it really does make the job of the contracting office go much quicker if you're sending over the correct associated line item with the funds. Okay. Now, I'm going to make this 1001. What I'm not going to do, let's see, option year 1. What I'm not going to do is make it an option. The reason being is that that option already exists on the award. All right, so the initial PR that was created most likely already established those line items as option years. So it is unnecessary for us to create line items as option years. And as a matter of fact, whenever this happens, whenever you mark something as an option period, CFS, the core financial system, will zero out any funding that is applied to that line item. So I'm sure everybody has seen this at some point. You send over a PR that with the intent to fund an option year, but you marked those line items as an option year. And when you send it over, Enterprise Services most likely sent it back or said, hey, there's no funding on here. And now we're all confused. And this is because you're marking you're marking these CLINs as option periods. All right. So please don't do that if you want your funding to actually be applied. It's a very easy mistake. It's a very common mistake. So just be on the lookout for that. Just make a mental note. I'm trying to fund this option year. I'm trying to provide funding for this option year. Do not mark it as an option. It has already been created. Okay. So I'm going to create this. I'm going to hit apply. I'm going to go to accounting. Okay. So same scenario before. We had a default accounting code come over. All right. I'm going to make an edit to this. I'm going to say F21. Yeah, cool. Done. Okay, great. All right. So I mean, honestly, that is really the only way, or that's how you create a line item for to exercise an option year. And let's talk about realignment structure. Okay, so this is something that we see typically around this time of year, sometimes earlier in the year, sometimes like when it's, Q1, Q2, because we're trying to shift a lot of funding. All right. Realignments. What is a realignment? A realignment is just a combination of a deobligation and an obligation. So when you're sending over a realignment PR, you're asking the contracting office to create a modification to an award that shifts funding from one line or one accounting code to another line or to a different accounting code. So the purpose of this PR is to demonstrate how to create a realignment PR. So in my purpose, I have CLIN 1, deobligate $1,400 from project 166 and obligate $1,400 onto project 0703. CLIN 2, deobligate $1,400 from 0703 and obligate $1,400 onto project 0166. Now, on the C award or contracting office side, this should result in a net sum of 0. However, on the C.Request side, this should result in a $2,800 obligation or a commitment of funds. And here's the reason. Moving money is adding money. So so previously I mentioned that CFS, the core financial system, tracks commitments based on the line item level. So we're going to need to make sure that we have a commitment there. All right. So let's take a look at CLIN 1. I've already kind of started doing this. So deobligate $1,400 from this project and obligate $1,400 onto project 0703. Now, Julian went through how to set up a deob PR in some great depth earlier this year. Those videos are going to be released as knowledge articles on an upcoming portal change. So I'm not going to really go over this a whole lot, except to say that you want to make sure that you have what you're doing in the description of the line items. This helps the contracting specialists, try to navigate things. So I've got a quantity of 2, and I've got $700 here. Likewise, I could just make this $1,400. Now the reason why is that we want to obligate, we want money on this CLIN. We want $1,400 to come onto this CLIN. So unless I commit money there, CFS is going to say on the C award side, CFS is going to ask a question. Where are you, how are you obligating $1,400 if you didn't have a $1,400 commitment? And this is why it's important to have those commitments when you're moving money. Okay. So let's take a look at the accounting code. I'm gonna hit OK. Let's make both of these FY21. Actually, let's do this, and need to do this FY21. So we have 0703 with a percentage of 100. Okay, and now the reason why we want 100 is because we're committing $1,400 under 0703. Now this other code, this 0166 code, you could leave this as 0. You could make this 0, or you could remove it entirely. Okay. Now the reason why you could remove it entirely is because, again, this accounting code already exists. You're basically just indicating via the description box of the line item that you want $1,400 to be deobligated from that project code. There's no reason to create another accounting code to send through the finance system if you're not going to fund it. So I'm going to hit delete here. Okay, great. So we're actually going to nix this. We're going to copy this from our purpose into the description box of CLIN 2. And we're going to hit apply. Deobligate $1,400 from 0703, obligate $1,400 onto project 0166. So I'm going to go into accounting, and we have 0166 here. Now, again, we have this previously created accounting code that came from the account default. So hopefully we remember that lesson. Now I'm going to make this change here. And now this one already does not have that 0703 or accounting code, all right? Because that's the one that we're deobligating from. And I'm going to just delete this option here. Okay. This one is marked as a base period, which would also work. It just can't be an option period. I'm actually going to remove this. And I'll hit save. Okay. Now, if you're doing any sort of manipulation with realignments and whatnot for prior year funding for FY20, then all of this should be non-funded. All of this should be 0 and 0. And the reason why is because CFS does not allow, we don't have true commitment accounting at the Department of Commerce, and we can't commit prior year funds. So if you're using prior year funds, everything has to be 0. But since we're not, we're going to reset these values. All right. Now, if I wanted to just get rid of this whole obligate part, I could just delete this and make this 0. So that works as well. Remember, I said that a realignment is just a combination of a deob and an obligation. So if you're just focused on deobligating something, then you can totally negate whatever I said about obligating money. Deobligations should all be $0 because you're not sending money over. You're basically just creating a reference for the contracting shop to know which line item I need and what money needs to go away. In this case, we're letting the contracting office know which line item they need, what money needs to go away, from where, and also how much money to obligate onto. So now let's talk about some requisition issues or errors that we might have with this. So I'm going to try and click commit. All right, let's imagine that I am wearing my fund certifying officer hat and I click commit. Okay, so I'm actually going to take the time to share a different screen. I'm going to share this little requisition report. Okay. Now, if you're an FCO, you occasionally might be seeing this as you try and click commit. And if you don't see something like this, that means you might have your pop-ups disabled, which is a bad thing. So you got to make sure that you have pop-ups enabled for Comprizon Suite. If you need help with that, then I would recommend that you reach out to your specific organization's IT office for enterprise services or anybody within HCHB or OS customers rather. It's just that IT service desk at doc.gov. That's our help desk. But you know, for the folks in the small bureaus, your help desk may be a little bit different. Okay. Make sure that you have your pop-ups enabled so you can see this requisition report. This is one type of error. It's what we call a local validation. This is something that was installed by CACI probably maybe 2 to 3 years ago. And what this does is that it's a trigger that has a system detecting whether or not certain parameters are met. So I tried to click commit. Before the system will even allow me to go into the commit screen, certain things need to be true. First, fund certifying officer name is not found or duplicate names found in user profile. To commit, you must be a fund certifying officer. So maybe I lied about wearing my FCO hat. Or a bona fide needs fund certifier has not approved this requisition. Well, rats. So let's go back to my requisition. Okay, so let's check this out. This is a nuance that we had to test and had to kind of develop between OAM, myself, and CACI, that it's the best that we got. So essentially what they're saying is that these two fields need to match up with fields